Hello, I am Mrs. Babila Emilia, Pedagogic Advisor English for AIMS Teacher Training Program in Cameroon, abbreviated TTP. It is not about making people accept that they have biases, but about making them realize that these prejudices have negative consequences for others. Theresia McHenry. Bias is a burden that confuses the past, threatens the future, and makes the present inaccessible. How can you create a more diverse and inclusive workplace if you are held back by your own biases? Maya Angelou. Hello to you and welcome to this training unit 7, Gender Responsive and Inclusive Pedagogy of Module 3, titled Teaching and Learning Mathematics. First of all, I want you to be attentive during this training unit because we are going to address a very important point which has a considerable impact on the quality of your students' participation during mathematics lessons and consequently on their results. Before we continue, let me ask you a few questions. These questions might seem trivial or obvious to you, questions that you may have already come across in the society, such as on the streets, in the staff room, in the classroom, on a TV show, on a radio show, through social media, etc. Questions that I want you to reflect and answer before and after this training unit. Therefore, I invite you to write them down on a piece of paper and take 2 minutes to reflect and answer them because we will come back to them at the end of this video. Here are the different questions. Where is the place of women in the kitchen or in the living room? Who should take care of the kitchen, man or woman? Who should take care of the children at home, mom or dad? Is mathematics for boys or for girls? Can a girl who is strong in mathematics be a good wife? What is a good wife? A scientific series meant for boys and literary series for girls? Have you ever had refugees in your classrooms? If so, what do you think of the mathematics level of the refugees? Can the blind do mathematics? Can people with physical challenges do mathematics? Can people with intellectual disabilities do mathematics? I invite you to keep your answers, and at the end of this video, we will analyze them together. Mind you, there is no wrong or right answer. There are just bad representation. This is why in this training unit, there will be no question of learning anything new or extraordinary. On the other hand, we will question and analyze together the different perceptions we have in terms of gender, cultural minorities, people with physical and mental challenges, immigrants in our society, and the impact of these different perceptions on the quality of your teaching as a mathematics teacher. Because it is what we think we already know that often prevents us from learning. Claude Bernard. Indeed, how can you create a more diverse and inclusive classroom if you are held back by your own biases? This is why in this training unit, we are going to question what you know. We will question your perception, your ideas, and your beliefs. Are these perceptions, ideas, and beliefs true? Do they give all your students the same opportunities, or is it just bias that we have constructed due to our environment, our culture, and even our habits, which is, as we used to say, our second nature? That is to say, a part of our personality to remain modest. In short, due to the fact that no one is perfect, during this training unit, we will lead you to identify your biases and establishing that these biases have negative impact on your students' learning in mathematics. What is the difference between gender and sex? When it comes to inclusive pedagogy, the question of sex and gender are the ones that come to mind first. However, the terms sex and gender are often used interchangeably, although they have different meanings. So let's start by pushing the doors open. What is sex? What is gender? How is the gender constructed? What is sex? The term sex refers to a set of biological attributes found in humans and animals. It is mainly related to physical and physiological characteristics, for example, chromosomes, gene expressions, hormones levels, and anatomy of the reproductive system. Sex therefore relates to biological, natural, and permanent differences, independent of social and cultural approaches. For Johnson et al. 2012, sex designates the observable physical characteristics that distinguish the two types of human beings, men and women. The sex of a person does not change with time. What is gender? The term gender refers to the rules, behavior, expressions, and identities that society constructs for men, women, girls, boys, people of various sexes. Gender influences how we perceive ourselves and others, our colleagues, our students, our societies, our children, etc., and the way we act and interact with others. This is a description of the characteristics that a given society recognizes as relating to masculinity or femininity. Gender includes a social construction determined by the community which assigns distinct roles and responsibilities to men and women. The establishment of social norms that reflect social and cultural understandings. The evolution and change of gender roles in time and space. The intended or unintended impact of gender constructions on classroom dynamics as stereotypes and roles arising from gender are repeated by teachers and learners. Thus, to quote Simone de Beauvoir, one is not born, but rather becomes a woman. In the same way, one is not born a man, but one becomes one through the whole process of family, school, and professional socialization. So since gender is not natural, but a spatio-temporal social construction, how is gender constructed within the community? How is gender constructed? In every society there are roles, implicit and explicit, which govern the role and status of each of its members according to their gender. These rules determine what is acceptable, suitable, and appropriate for everyone, whether they are female or male. We learn in community to be a man or a woman, with the rights and duties specific to his sex. This is why girls' education is done in a way that prepares them for future roles as mothers and wives. Thus, they help prepare in the kitchen, draw water, take care of their siblings, and are constantly reminded to have a low profile to be a good wife. So for you, what is a good woman? What is a well-educated girl? If for a mathematics teacher, the place of women is in the kitchen, do you think that this teacher will send as many girls as boys to the board to do exercises? Can this teacher devote the same time to boys and girls who have difficulty understanding a notion in mathematics? Could this have any influence on the interactions that this teacher might have with his female or male students? Can this colleague's class be called inclusive? At the same time, boys experience a different socialization. They must be brave, courageous, take major decisions, and accompany their fathers to events of major importance. How many times have you heard someone use the famous phrase, "A man does not cry"? Crying is for women. You will find that even mothers tell their male children this. So in your opinion, are women more emotional than boys? Is it by nature or is it the society, including the school, that has built this character? Do your mathematics lessons help to reduce this social construction or to maintain it and even to accentuate it? What is the impact of gender on maths scores? Gender has a significant impact on your students' mathematics results. Wendy Stein, talking on the gender issues in mathematics, asserts that there are many gender problems in the teaching and learning of mathematics, and these problems vary according to time, culture, and social contexts. There are in fact a number of gender-related factors that determine students' participation in mathematics lessons, and therefore their results and subsequently their career choices. Here are a few. 1. The way teachers are dress boys and girls. 2. The unequal distribution of domestic tasks which overload the girls. 3. The lack of role models in science and mathematics. 4. Social stereotypes such as illustrations in books and textbooks. 5. The language of discrimination, emphasizing one sex to the detriment of the other. For example, a force of 10 men, Madam Minister, needs in men, etc. 6. Misconceptions that maths and sciences are for boys. 7. Teaching methods which do not make the subject relevant to the daily life of the pupils. 8. Early limiting education, girls limited to care roles. 9. The leadership responsibilities that teachers and parents assign to boys. Gender-responsive pedagogy in maths classes. Now you know the impact gender construction can have on your students' results. So let us look at some recommendations you can follow to practice gender-friendly pedagogy in your maths class. Those that we are going to offer you are a summary of the Gender-Friendly Pedagogy Manual developed by the Forum of African Women Educators, FAWE, usually referred to as the pillars. The choice of teaching and learning material. The choice of appropriate teaching and learning material is fundamental in the educational process and is instrumental in the mental shaping of your students. That is why, as a mathematics teacher, you should choose teaching and learning materials that minimize the gender stereotype. For example, when illustrations in textbook predominantly feature men, you may need to readjust some of them in your planning notes. Likewise, if an exercise features male scientists such as inventors, it should also include a discussion of female scientists. The choice of teaching methodology. As a mathematics teacher, your scientific methodology should ensure equal participation of girls and boys in your classroom. Indeed, some pedagogical methodologies such as group work, group discussions, role plays, debates, case studies, explorations, and practical applications are more effective in encouraging students' participation and will therefore empower girls the opportunity to become more actively involved. Choosing the learning activity. As a mathematics teacher, make sure that all students take part in the learning activity. For example, make sure that girls and boys have the opportunity to participate during your lessons and even within each working group. Encourage girls to coordinate and present the work of their group. Be careful, practicing a gender-oriented pedagogy does not mean working only with girls, but rather making both girls and boys work together. Classroom setup and interaction. As a maths teacher, you need to organize the setup of the classroom. For example, you can organize your classroom so that you always have girls next to boys. Likewise, you should ensure that you interact with students in a way that promotes equal participation of girls and boys. Also ensure that appropriate comments and observations are made to both girls and boys, because language as a communication tool largely reveals our thoughts and beliefs. Therefore, you should avoid using terms that describe one sex as being inferior or superior to the other. Gender constraints, harassment, and sexual maturation. As a mathematics teacher, you also need to know how to deal with gender-specific issues. For example, you need to be aware of girls' absence during menstruation, house chores or family responsibility, bullying, sexual harassment, hormonal upheavals in adolescence, and the bullying of most adolescent boys, change of voice in boys, impact of HIV/AIDS, peer pressure and intimidation, among others. Feedback and assessment. As a mathematics teacher, you are invited to provide adequate feedback to both boys and girls and give all of them encouraging words. Use of language. The use of language in the classroom is also a contributing factor to students' participation in the lesson. The language must be used carefully, and as a teacher, you must avoid using words that will frame one gender as inferior or superior to the other. You must be conscious of the gender biases inherent in the language of some textbooks and in class. Inclusion to avoid discrimination. When it comes to inclusion, it is common to dwell on the question of gender because it is very visible in our contemporary societies. But as you can imagine, the issue of inclusion goes beyond gender because talking about inclusion also means questioning our behavior and our prejudices vis-a-vis cultural minorities, people with physical and mental disabilities, and immigrants in our society. What does inclusion mean and what implications may the use of this term have in our mathematics lessons? What is inclusion? Inclusion consists in creating collective conditions, context, operating rules, shareable values, allowing each member of the society, whatever it is, to assert his personality, his talent, his ideas, his energy to bring the best of oneself to a common project. Inclusion is therefore generally two issues: permeability and coherence. The permeability implies that society should be open enough to be accessible and welcoming to a host of differences, since we are all different and all the other economically, height, age, intellectual level, gender, ethnicity, culture, education, etc. The coherence that society must build a common operating mode acceptable by each of its members and beneficial to all. As a mathematics teacher, you need to make sure that these two inclusion issues are respected in your classrooms at all times in order to ensure an inclusive classroom. How to apply inclusion. The inclusive approach is fundamentally participatory. This is why, as a mathematics teacher concerned with the success of your students, you must allow each student to exercise two concomitant responsibilities: that of expressing him or herself and that of allowing others to do the same. As you know, speaking leads and example teaches. Let's take an example. Suppose you have a student with albinism in your class. As you know, albinos have vision and sun problems. You can arrange your classroom so that this student is in the first place in front of the chalkboard to be sure that he or she can easily see what is written on it. In addition, he or she must not be exposed to the sun so as to protect his or her skin. Let us take another example. In your class, you will always have students of different heights. Some will be short and some will be tall. The application of inclusion here can be to keep short students in the front of the class and tall students in the back seat of the classroom. This example can be easily extended to cultural minorities, people with physical and mental disabilities, and migrants that you may have in your classrooms. Generally, as a mathematics teacher, you still have to allow every student to contribute to the construction and animation of a working environment in the classroom that is more engaging, participatory, while taking into account the specificities of each student. Conclusion. As a mathematics teacher, apply a pedagogy that respects gender and inclusion during your maths lessons will allow everything to be challenged by you. In particular, your posture, your behavior, your ways of doing things, your visions, etc., and your students, their legitimacy, their interests, their resistance, their commitments, etc. Because inclusive pedagogy makes it possible to answer the questions how to act collectively when we are so different, and invites you to do otherwise, because there is no need to be ashamed if you have biases. We all grow up in a world that provides us with a vast set of biases made out about people of different ethnicities, cultures, gender identities, ages, disabilities, etc. They may be buried deep within us that we may not even know them, but they inform our actions nonetheless. This is why, as a mathematics teacher, you should practice inclusion in your classroom and even in your immediate environment, because successful inclusion must first and foremost help those around you to identify and recognize their own biases. Only then can they begin to make better, fairer decisions. Before we go our separate ways, we invite you to take again the piece of paper on which you answered the questions at the beginning of this training unit. Are your answers always the same? What changed? Leave comments in the forum to share your experiences. As you know, coming together is a beginning. Staying together is progress. Working together is success. Don't forget to share your ideas and questions in the forum. You can also go to the TTP COP platform via the following link: